Curmudgeon in the Cellar. I got to get a better beginning to this thing so I know when it's actually doing anything. Some things to talk about. We'll start with one that has the least amount to do with game. Watching this about last Tuesday, which was primary election day. Now, I've been an election official in the state of Ohio for several elections now, and I rather enjoy it. It's an interesting, it's a very long, very arduous day, but I find it quite interesting, especially as a retired so I enjoy exercising my civic duty. So I've done that too. Anyway, I was appalled at the low turnout again. How these bozos got on the ballot in November that they have no idea who they are or what. And see who they were going to choose. Look into it. These galloping baboons that you find on the primary are put there by your apathy. If you went out and voted in the primary, good on you. It might upon you. And I've just cast you. My video seems to be stopping and starting tonight. I hope this is working out. We'll know later when I look at it. If you see it, it was. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's start with weaning people off of video games. Video games atrophy your brain as a gamer because they do too much for you. Asked by a person who responded to one of these how they would begin a new game for people, a bunch of newbies who are coming in off of video games and they can't be bothered with or can't seem to grasp. Here we go. I'm starting an AD&D campaign with my millennial friends. Being used to video games, they're having a hard time dealing with encumbrance, memorizing spells, and me counting the distance they walk out on a dungeon. Corridor, 10 feet, 20 feet, etc., as stated in the brown books. Any hints? Okay. Yeah. Don't worry about don't overly worry about the encumbrance. Set those charts aside and use common sense that they can relate to. You know, if you happen to find a sack of money, gold, for instance, an equally large canvas bag full of lead sinkers makes a good weight comparison. So how many of those bags of lead sinkers? Common sense gets you involved in this. Starting out with lots of rigid charts and tables and limitations is not the best way to do it because their little brains are atrophied from too much time spent playing video games where it does all the thinking for them. They don't have to remember how many bullets they've fired or arrows they've shot or whatever because the game does it for them. You might you might guess that I'm not a big fan of that. Memorizing spells is just tough. Something they got to do. Write them down. How hard is that? It's not like you're really telling them, okay, test tomorrow. You got to recite back all the words of come on. If they're that lazy, if their brain is that atrophied, perhaps they're not worthy of your efforts to try to show them the path. The good gaming. I don't know. I wouldn't know how to deal with a bunch of millennials, except I can give you an example of something I did a couple of years ago. First off, before I get into the story, what I did a couple of years ago, sit them down and tell them to close their eyes and know they can't open them. And make them look at everything in their head. Don't let them look at each other. Go out and get a bunch of handkerchiefs and put on blindfolds. 10, 15 minutes of that, I think they'll get the hang of what you're talking about, because, oh, golly gosh, now they got to make their own pictures. And if they really can't get into it, maybe they really don't want to play video games. Now, maybe they want to go back to play video games and they don't really want to play our kind of games. Here's what I did. A couple of years ago, my wife came home, said words I'd never hoped to hear her say, never had heard her say in 46 years. We run a game for me. A whole bunch of her friends from her Zumba group. One had played once or twice, one back in college. Another one had played a couple of times. Nobody else had done anything. I said, sure. And so here's how I eased them in. They're all in a Zumba group, right? Here's the natural. These are all ladies that are members of an order, a group, a belief system. Tailor this yourself. Anyway, they're all into fitness, and they're into natural, healthy, clean living. And they do lots of exercise with these walking sticks, which just also happen to make wonderful hand-to-hand weapons. Okay, not killing, because you're not going to send them up against dragons and crap like that. Okay, so they're all just they're fit, so they have decent strengths, and their intelligence is that none of them are dumb. I prepared all this stuff and I handed them out when they came in. Here, have a sheet, have a sheet, have a sheet, have a sheet. This is who you are. They're fit, they're healthy, they're kind of maxi on their hit points and what they can have, because you want to make these people buff for what they're going to do. And what happens is a bunch of nasty bugbears broke into their temple, their ashram, whatever, and stole their sacred bell and made off with it. And so they got to go track it down. And so you don't give them anything that they can't bunk with the sticks, pack of dogs that threatens them, and some pixies or fairies that fool around with them and all that. But you don't make it real hard. They're bugbears. You describe bugbears. And so they're tracking them. They have a funny footprint. And so they're easy to see. Somebody in the group can come from a background where her parents, your family were hunters, or they lived on the frontier, whatever. You can put all this kind of stuff in and ease them into it. You ease them into it. You don't even have to identify which character it is that can see the footprints, because that'll make one person think they're more busy or more important or whatever than the rest or whatever. Just somebody has that ability. So yes, you're able to see after the trail comes blurry. Oh, yep, there's a bugbear footprint. You're still in the right direction. And so we went down, we confronted the bugbears, and we beat up the bugbears and took back our sacred bell. And they went home and they all had a great fun. And it lasted about 3.5 hours. And as I said, none of them had ever played before. But I kept it simple. I kept it in context of things that all these ladies, and there was a guy that was playing too, one of the husbands, all these ladies could relate to, because they're in Zumba. That's how you bring a bunch of newbies in. Find a common thing that they can relate to, or you blindfold them. Tell them, all right, start using your brains. And the ones that short out, well, they weren't meant to be role players. Anyway, I guess. I'm only half serious. Okay, here's an interesting question. And then, no, I don't truly have an answer, but I have a comment. A gentleman asked me if I had any insight on it. Tom Moldvay's basic, there's details on Dragon's Breath weapons damage. The number of points of damage any breath weapon does is equal to the dragon's remaining number of hit points. Do you know where you got Moldvay got this rule to deviate from the hit dice based damage? Was it a house rule of his or someone else? Maybe to make the breath less lethal, etc. Well, I think, here's what I think. I think you overlooked the word basic. Remember what I said a couple episodes ago, why we made BASIC? The company policy of BASIC was for younger players to become introduced to the concepts of role-playing. Actually, as a short rule of thumb, that's a pretty decent rule of thumb. I don't disagree with that concept at all. Yeah, so if a dragon's only got 34 hit points left, how's it going to do, 51 of damage? I don't have a problem with that. After all, dragons start with such ungodly number of hit points to begin with. It's going to take a while before it diminishes it. And actually, that's really a pretty decent way of showing the waning, diminishing capability of a dragon that you're beating the hell out of, or that's old and sick. That's really a pretty good rule, Tom. Good thinking. And thanks for whoever sent that in to me to make me think about it. I like it. All right. What else are we going to talk about? Okay. I have to look at my list here. Pardon me. All right. Something I've been noticing on the Evil One Facebook recent weeks is what's beginning to look like fantasy gaming softcore porn. There's a sponsored ad of a butt and some legs that's attached to a torso and a head. But I mean, the clear focus of it is a female elf's butt who's wielding a crossbow on the bow of a ship coming up. And there's a couple others like that. And I don't even know if they're the same game. Chances are they're not. But when you see the choice buttons, one on either side of the screen, one here, one there. Oh, yeah, I got to do that back here. One here, one there. One says fondle, and the other says something like caress or assault, or, I mean, Jesus criminy, what the hell is going on here? And of course, the promo crap above the suggested picture is, oh, you got to be 18 to play this. Okay, paint it with the forbidden fruit. Come on. If you want porn, there's a gazillion places out there you can find free porn. Fantasy porn? Okay, you're going to go make it with I guess if you're into making it with a set of pixels on the screen, I guess if you want them to be elves for 20 years, it's your business. But I really find some of that kind of weird and hard to understand. Let's see. So there's that. Okay. Let's talk about what's important. And this goes to bringing in newbies. What's important is what you decide is important. But what you need to sit down and think is it really? Let's go back to that encumbrance question, okay? How often do you think about encumbrance in a normal situation? Nobody, the vast majority of people that RPG, when setting out upon an adventure, do not have a backpack that extends 2 feet over their head like they're getting ready to go out in the Canadian wilderness and rappel down sheer mountain faces for a week and camp on the side of the mountain. Okay, so we don't go out fully encumbered. Maybe you do. I never have. Is it important to count arrows? Well, I don't know. Say a standard quiver holds 25 arrows or 30 arrows. Okay, those two numbers seem to be not too far off reality, if all things considered. And it is fantasy after all. And, there's only some physics that apply to fantasy. Same as sci-fi. There's only certain ones. So anyway, you got a quiver of arrows on your back, and you got an extra quiver of arrows in your backpack. I would assume you're an archer. I would just assume that's normal. So you got 50, 60 arrows. And you shoot 9 times. Now, I'm assuming, giving you the player credit, have I found out how bad that can go wrong sometimes, but I'm assuming that you retrieve the ones you can. And no, they're not all perfect to retrieve, but I don't care. Now, if we get into a long, prolonged battle, well, of course, at some point, we're going to go, yeah, well, that quiver of arrows is just about out. And hopefully that archer's got another quiver. Because if you're in a long, prolonged battle, you're not running around picking up the misses. Though sometimes, when it's that kind of battle, I let them pick up a few of the misses, and I don't let them run out right away. You really just want to see the thing get resolved. So how many arrows, right? Rocks for slings or sling bullets. On one of my preachings, one of my preachings that is a slinger has a magical item. It's called a bag of infinite rocks. Don't worry about that crap. If you don't have a bag of infinite rocks, okay, what are you gonna think the average? Think the average projectile. Number one, remember slings are awfully hard to work in confined spaces. You need a lot of room around your head. That's why one of my pre-gens is a dwarf or a hobbit with a sling staff. Boy, is he wicked, because he can work a sling in a normal, 8 to 10 foot cord or whatever. Anyway, and being on a staff, it amplifies the power. So, the rocks, well, good. You can pick up some irregular ones and still get pretty dang accurate with it. So I don't worry about it. I don't burden, particularly new players, don't burden them with stuff that's really not important. Now, suppose they're on one of my adventures. And yes, they found the ruins of the lost temple of the bug god. And yes, the priest scampered off with most of the treasure, but they left these 3 enormous chests full, and they finally get him out after a poison arrow gets one, but he makes his saving throw, and somebody else tries to eat his fingers, but it doesn't, and they open him up, and there's 117,000 copper pieces. It's 117,000 pennies. All right, that's the way I look at it. In my world, in my copper's about the size of a penny. A silver is about the size of a nickel, and a gold's about the size of a quarter. And I don't really pay a lot of attention to the density issues until it becomes necessary, and then you allow common sense to overcome any stupid impulses you might have had early on. All right, so you find the loot, and there's Captain Kidd's treasure, and it's a foot locker, that's 3.5 feet long and 2.5 feet wide and 3 feet tall, and it's stuffed to the rim with silver and gold pieces. Yeah, they can all fill their pockets up and everything like that, and they're going to jingle and they're going to clink, and it's like going to the church festival and pardon me, winning on the quarter game all night long and walking out of the park grounds with both your pockets looking like a chipmunk's cheeks full of quarters. and you holding on with both hands to your pants to keep them from falling on the ground. And when you start implying or applying real life laws, use an example just like I gave, and it goes, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, you can load your backpack up, but if you explain it in those terms, telling them now, full backpack, you're going to be slow, dude. That's common sense. You don't have to worry about any formulas or anything like that. Just explain it in common sense terms. Something they can relate to now. That's not metagaming. That's setting them up. Coppers are this big, silvers are this big, gold are this big. Yes, gold's denser than silver, so it will weigh disproportionately more than the size differential would suggest. That's it. Goodbye. You don't worry about the rest of stuff. Now, certain things that are not numerous in nature, for instance, spears or javelins or something. Yeah, bad luck, you break a javelin trying to trigger a trap or something. That kind of stuff, yeah, you got to keep track of that. Just like if you broke a dagger. I don't get into swords breaking and things like that unless they're fighting against a magic sword that has that ability, or a giant person, or that would be an extraordinary circumstance. I don't go into critical hits and hit locations and stuff like that. We've spoken about often enough. There's a poll going on Facebook now about why do you play war games? And I use war games, capital or small W war games, and in it I include minis, and I include board games, and I include RPGs. And I like to call them adventure games. All of those I like to call that, but then again, I'm prejudiced because I had a little rag that I called that. And there was a guy that commented and lamented the fact that, oh God, doesn't he misses a physical paper magazine that you can open up and smell, and oh Lord, so do I. But I think in our industry, as fractured as it is, I don't think that model is, I don't think it's sustainable anymore. Why do we game? Oh, I don't know. I game for every other Wednesday night. The fellas, as my wife calls them, come over. I've known these guys, most of them since the early 80s. And we didn't game for a while when they started to get married and have families and that. And then we got back together again several years ago. And we're gaming again now. And we game because we get together. Hey, how's it going? We socialize. 2 nights ago, it was Pick on Greg night. I don't know. Sometimes it's like that. It's like sometimes you're like a flock of grackles. You realize that one in your flock of grackles is weak, and so the grackles will turn on it and peck it until it dies. Now, we didn't peck Greg until he died, but for some reason it's just okay. It's Greg's turn on the barrel that night, and then Graydon got drilled for a while, and then I got drilled for a while. And, if it was about winning, I wouldn't do it, because I still tell you, I hardly ever win. When I do, it's either because one of them isn't there, or we're of a group that is pretty equal in talent, but we play games that have a great variance factor, feudality, and games that have an element of chance, that no matter how neat a plan you have, if you don't get the right parts when you need it, your plan sucks wind. Some nights I get needled though they were very nice to me when I was in chemotherapy. But that's part that's part of why I play. It's the social aspect. My friends. It's why I go to cons, to see my friends and to make new friends and to play games with strangers. Um, I'm very blessed in that I do get to do that 4 times a year. I get to fly around and play games with strangers and make new friends. Um, Beside that, I do it for the problem solving. Now we're getting into board games and minis. Um, the problem changes every turn. The solution, the solution can appear. You think you know the solution at one stage of the game, but apparently later on, that's not the way to achieve your end. And so you change. One of the absolute best old board games that I can recommend that you should look for in thrift stores, online, whatever, came out of Australia from a company named Jedco, Jedko. And the game was called Field Marshal. Field Marshal was one of the very first games that I'm aware of where a deck of cards had a major impact on the play of the game. All right, because we were looking at this game in the mid 70s, 75, 76. We were looking at this game, and I was playing it back then. And it's a very abstract game in that it's 2 armies. You have artillery, you have airborne, you have infantry, you have armor. It's relatively simple, much like Tactics 2, the old Avalon Hill game. It's learning combined arms on an abstract level. But what makes it so fun is the deck of cards, because you're going along and you're trying to make your victory conditions. And the next time the card turns up, it's like, what? Are you shitting me? I got to send a core off the board? And so, okay, you're shifting units up and down your front. You're shifting units out of your reserve. Okay. And it changes. And you might think you're doomed, and yet your opponent just got a worse card. So neither one of you do anything, hoping to God that nothing gets done to you. And then next time, aha, you got an airborne division coming in at so and it's just or there's an airborne division dropping behind you. What are you going to do about it? It's that kind of problem solving. It changes from turn to turn to turn that I like. It's why I like games like Fight in the Skies. Our relative positions to each other changes every turn. So the solution, in this case, a firing solution, changes every turn. That's why I like the game. The problem solving, the thinking, making my brain work. Winning, yeah, that's fun. It's not why I play. I enjoy it. I won't say I don't. I try to be a good winner. Some games that's harder than others. Not with war games so much, but others, card games and such. It's harder. But I do it for the mental exercise, as well as meeting new people and seeing old friends and sitting around the table. And it's like a family that has a tradition together, like of say camping every year, and they sit around that Saturday night with a big fire and they start telling embarrassing stories on each other and stuff. That's kind of what it's like. That kind of ribbing, gentle fun, but sometimes not so gentle, but never mean spirited. That's why I do it. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. Here's something I kind of don't understand, sort of. If I'd never seen him, I wouldn't feel I'd missed anything if I heard about him. I don't understand the appeal because it's Well, I sort of understand the appeal because it's just observing. It's just voyeurism. And that is that there's some games out there, PC games now I'm talking about, that are battle simulators and campaign simulators and such. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of these out here. 10 T-34s against 10 Panther 5, 10 Tiger 2s against 50 Shermans. Well, it's now, and so they put them, and they make, and it's like war cartoons. Now, I'll admit there's been a couple of games in the past and that I've done that with. Age of Wonders being one of them. I'll let it go up and then just like, okay, I fight the battle and I watched the war cartoon. I don't deny that. I did that a couple of years ago. I was doing that, letting the AI fight because the AI fights better than me. But these are, I saw one. One Jesus versus 33,000 Satans. Some people's belief systems are going to be rather strained at the result of that one. Fighting off of it's not what they're doing. It's why not take this game, and this is this is what the game is for. Why would you waste your time setting all this up and then these guys comment on it as it goes along and they keep going around the screen and looking at everything? To me, I just rather sit down and go, hey Don, come on over, we're going to play this thing out. I'm not just going to watch it. We're going to play it. That's what it's for. One of them, Total War, I think it's called, up to 8 people can play at one time. So play the damn thing. Don't simulate it, because I know that when it comes to odds and probabilities and all that stuff, if a given cannon, in this case a tank gun, has an 80% chance of penetrating the other guy's tank. Yeah, if there's 1,000 shots, 800 of them are going to penetrate. But it could be the last 800. It's when you're playing on the odds and the probabilities and that, it seems to me it's boring as hell. I'd much rather wield my tanks against your tanks. I direct where they go, and I would rather have my tactics defeat your tactics than just have my uber weapons sit there in defend mode and just mow them down as they come along. Some of it's Warhammer themed, big orange nasty buggers. Mildly interesting, but it seems to me going in the wrong direction. I'd want to play those games, not just sit there and make them up and watch them. Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Is playing the games and not being a voyeur and watching them? I don't know. That's what I do. Let's see what else is coming up on the schedule. Well, in June, I'll be going down to Texas for NTRPG, North Texas RPG Con. That's June 7th through the 10th. Got a chance to go. You really should. You really should. That's all I got for now. Questions? Disputes? disputations, refutations, comments at the end. Until then, roll the dice and have a good time.